I had some fun times, especially with RanterInShades visiting my bungalow.
That's me. Hey guys, RanterInShades here, exercise my first to memorize vlog style. This is part 2 of a 4-part series I made with AtticusTheDeathMetaller when I visited him in Florida, going over what may very well be the stupidest metal list ever published by Hit Parader in November 2006. If you haven't seen part 1, click the link in the description to the playlist for the series. Now let's get on with the video.
Alright, 75, Gavin Rossdale of Bush.
Yeah, I remember watching the docu-series on Woodstock 99, and after Korn absolutely destroyed their set, Gavin was like so scared shitless about performing after Korn. He's like, oh shit, and then he started playing and everyone's like, yeah, and then he's like, oh fuck, we're doing it.
But what is Bush doing on a metal list?
They're more of like...
They're a post-grunge band.
Yeah, post-grunge.
Yeah, they were like the band that sort of invented post-grunge.
Mm-hmm.
We believe that it has to irk Gavin Rossdale just a little bit that these days he's known more for his role as the husband of pop princess Gwen Stefani than for his own myriad rock and roll accomplishments.
Tell me lies, tell me sweet little lies.
But in all honesty, Rossdale has nothing to apologize for in terms of hard rock acumen.
I said cinnamon! Cinnamon!
His platinum-selling work in the mid-90s with Bush served as a vital musical bridge between the angst-filled world of grunge and the more straightforward sounds of the new metal kingdom. No, it doesn't.
No. Shut up.
On hit after hit, Rossdale's soaring, distinctive voice added both substance and color to many of that time's most notable songs. These days, he's reasserting his heavy side with a new band, Institute.
Hey guys, Future Shades here. We apparently skipped over number 74 when we were filming this, which was Des Fafara of Coal Chamber and Devil Driver. So, just so we're not leaving anything out, here's what Hit Parader had to say about him. If you push the point with him, perhaps even Des Fafara will admit that his vocal sound is something of an acquired taste. But to a generation of underground metal fans who first got behind Dez's musical caravan with Coal Chamber and have since followed him on to his latest project, Devil Driver, his efforts have represented some of the finest on-the-edge metal presentations of the last decade. When you throw in his heavily tattooed, slightly sinister stage persona for good measure, you end up with one of the more interesting frontmen of the modern metal era. He's certainly interesting for sure, given how different of bands Coal Chamber and Devil Driver are, so I can definitely understand why they would want to feature him on a list like this. But, and I'm not sure if this was really explained the best by either of us in this video, I feel like a lot of the new metal and alternative metal people that are featured on this list, I could definitely see being featured on a list like this if it were made today, but in 2006, when this list was published, I'm just not sure it really makes that much sense given how new both Coal Chamber and Devil Driver were at the time, if that makes sense. But either way, I like Coal Chamber. I think Devil Driver is pretty good. I don't really listen to them that much, but I know they're pretty good. I know Atticus is a big fan of both of these bands, and I think that's all I have to say about this, so back to the video.
73, Pepper Keenan.
Pepper Keenan, wasn't he like a guitar player for Crowbar or Down?
Corrosion of Conformity.
Okay, alright.
Yeah. Pepper Keenan may rank among the least familiar members of our notorious Top 100. Not that such a notion bothers old Pepper in the least. Perhaps that lack of recognition is in part due to the fact that when this long-haired rocker first joined his most prominent band, Corrosion of Conformity, by the way, he's also a member of Down with former Pantera vocalist Phil Anselmo, he was merely one of that unit's guitarists. But after switching over to grab hold of that band's vocal reins, he helped the COC crew reach their greatest acclaim with his rough and ready style, getting the band noticed at a time in the mid-90s when interest in hard rock was near its low ebb. 72, Mike Shinoda.
Mike Shinoda, Linkin Park, one of my gateway bands of rock and metal. He was great alongside the late and great Chester Bennington.
Yeah. I'm not one of those people that likes calling Linkin Park metal.
Yeah, they were like more new rock.
Yeah, I consider them more hard rock or alternative rock. Plain and simple, to many contemporary hard rock fans, the vocalist in Linkin Park is Chester Bennington. To their way of thinking, this rap-styled efforts of co-lead singer Mike Shinoda are there merely to fill up space until the next one of Chester's heartfelt outbursts. But anyone who chooses to overlook Shinoda's multifaceted efforts within the LP camp is kinda missing the point behind this trend-setting unit. This is the guy who, perhaps more than anyone else, has helped guide the band's unique creative vision to the prominent place in Platinum Paradise that it currently enjoys. Yeah.
Yep.
71, Fred Durst.
Did it all for the nookie. Did it all for the nookie.
Do you think that Fred Durst deserves to be on this?
Well, it said about, like, metal vocalists. I mean, I mentioned I've had a love-hate thing with Limp Bizkit, but now I'm just accepting that Limp Bizkit is just Jacksonville's pride and glory, along with the Jaguars.
Yeah. It's just so easy to take potshots at Limp Bizkit's Fred Durst. For whatever reason, this multi-talented North Carolina native has become the poster boy for everything that went wrong with the hard rock form in the late 90s. Sure, his band's simplistic rap metal style proved to be instantly popular, spawning a whole subgenre of hard rock acts in the process, but the inherent limitations of the approach, teamed with Durst's somewhat grating I'm in Hollywood persona, soon proved to be his band's downfall. Still, you gotta admire a dude who got as far as he did, including both dating some of Tinseltown's hottest hotties and becoming a vice president at a major record label with such an apparent minimum of talent, hair, and looks.
You gotta hand it to Fred Durst. He's still going strong.
Yeah. These days, I can imagine people are more inclined to agree with this, but in 2006, I imagine people were probably fuming at the mouth.
Yeah.
Like a chomp, hey, 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 like a chomp, hey.
70, Don Dokken.
Of Dokken.
Yes, great singer.
No opinion on them.
Yeah, Dokken's one of my favorite glam metal bands.
Right.
Don Dokken always took himself oh so seriously. It was as if he truly believed there was a special degree of depth and substance behind the highly enjoyable, yet light as a feather pop metal odes that helped carve out his musical legacy in the mid-80s. The fact is that few people could write better stick-to-your-brain hard rock anthems than Don and his Dokken sidekicks. But his one-dimensional whine often took some of the luster off of those rockers, while transforming his ballads into saccharine sweet showcases, far more notable for the sterling six-string interludes performed by guitar master George Lynch.
George Lynch, I'm familiar. Every time I go to the ESP Guitars website, I always look at his crazy new signature guitars.
George is what really made the stuff. Dokken was merely the assistance there. 69 dudes. Amy Lee.
Wake me up.
I think it's kind of funny how she's number 69.
Yes. Oh, yeah. But yes, Evanescence. Good bands. I mean, they had other great music, but ever since that one video that Filthy Frank made, the band became a meme with Bring Me to Life.
Yeah.
Wake me up inside. Wake up.
When Evanescence's first album hit the rock scene back in 2002, by the way, their next one should be out any day now. I think their second album did come out.
Yeah, it was the song Call Me When You're Sober.
Yeah. It instantly transformed its vocalist, Amy Lee, into a crossover sensation, with the band's videos popping up on MTV on an hourly basis and their songs playing on radio more often than Pepsi commercials. Lee's powerfully soaring, angelic voice became one of the year's most recognizable sounds. Indeed, in the 4 years that now have passed since that impressive arrival, interest in both Lee and her band has continued to escalate, making the arrival of disc number 2 one of the year's most eagerly anticipated events.
You have to hand it to her, she has a phenomenal singing voice.
Yeah, for sure.
Like, I remember Evanescence was like at their prime in the early 2000s, and then they just faded off. Then Filthy Frank resurrected, and then they just became a meme. But still, you have a lot of people that have a lot of respect for Amy Lee's vocal range.
Yeah. Scott Stapp, number
Can
60.
you take me higher?
I know these days, you know, people's opinions are kind of turning around on Creed, but what is he doing on this list?
But hey, like, I mean...
And also, to spoil something else, Miles Kennedy is nowhere to be found on this list.
Yeah, that's a downside. But, you know, I know a lot of people hated the shit out of Creed, but I think people were all like, you know what? I think they were good right from the start. But...
The reason why people are saying that is because they're recognizing how awesome Mark Tremonti is.
Yes,
and it's like,
as a underrated guitar.
he's not underrated at all.
I mean, most
like,
people think that he is, but I know you hold him in such high regard.
Yeah, still, I find it just absolutely offensive that Scott Stapp is on here and Miles Kennedy isn't. Even though Alter Bridge had their first first album out. Sure, they wouldn't come out with their best album until a year later after this, but still, though, it's like, come on.
Yeah, it's so funny.
Yeah. So, Scott Stapp has rarely left much middle ground for those who want to praise him, or those who wish to condemn him. During his 7-year stint with Creed, during which time the band sold over 30 million albums, marking them as one of the most successful hard rock acts of their generation, Stapp's dynamic, if occasionally overwrought and religiously tinged style, was constantly singled out for either its dynamic sensibilities or its blowhard posturing. You're making more of a case for them to not be on this. Either way, this darkly handsome frontman found himself as one of the last decade's most recognizable performers, a fact that also helped translate into platinum sales for his 2005 solo debut. 67. Perry Farrell, Jane's Addiction. One of the early alternative metal acts. Perry Farrell may never be confused with any of the best voices in the rock and roll world. After all, over the years, his nasally whine has annoyed just as many people as it has pleased. But what the leader of such bands as Porno for Pyros, and most notably Jane's Addiction, has going for him is a no-fear kind of showmanship that has carried him to the pinnacle of underground success. When you throw into the mix his ever-clever decision to launch the often groundbreaking Lollapalooza Festival, in the early 90s, you begin to get the picture of a guy who constantly has his mind cranked into high gear.
A few years ago, Lollapalooza had Lorna Shore.
So yeah, Lollapalooza is thanks to Perry Farrell, of course. And Jane's Addiction, I really like their first 2 albums. I don't really know much of their stuff outside of that, but it did a lot to really define what alternative metal was in the late 80s.
Yeah.
66. Josie Scott of Saliva.
Another very underrated butt rock band. They did an awesome performance on WrestleMania 18 with Superstar. Also, when the Dudley Boys went out with Stacy Keibler. Hit the tables!
But tell me, do you think that Josie Scott deserves to be on this list?
I mean, he's an alright vocalist.
Yeah, he's not bad. I do like some of Saliva's albums, but I feel like this is another one of those pandering to the nu metal crowd. A few years back, it seemed as if Saliva's bearded vocalist Josie Scott was on the fast track to true hard rock stardom. His band's debut album had sold well, and its follow-up had launched a radio-friendly single. He even teamed up with Nickelback's ever-present Chad Kroeger to record the theme for the first Spider-Man movie.
Yes.
It seemed all was going swimmingly for Scott, but by 2003, when Saliva's latest album hit a bit of a commercial wall, it seemed like he took a major step back for his quest for big-time recognition. It's our bet that he'll soon rally back to the top, and no, that never happened.
It never really happened. But yeah, when Sam Raimi's first Spider-Man came out, I remember that Hero was such a sick song.
Yeah, and when I saw Nickelback live last summer, they played that.
Nice!
Hey guys, Future Shades here again, just cutting in to make a really quick point since Nickelback was mentioned just now. First of all, yes, I feel absolutely no shame at all in having gone to a Nickelback show. It was really fun, even if getting in was really hectic. But to give another spoiler for this list, no, Chad Kroeger is not going to be featured anywhere, even though you'd probably think that they would feature him on here given the kinds of other people we've been seeing here, and not to mention Nickelback had just released their most commercially successful album with all the right reasons. But nope, he's not here, and I have 2 possible reasons as to why. The first is that Chad doesn't meet Hit Parader's criteria for being a metal vocalist, which, if that's the case, then how do you explain all the other non-metal people that we've been seeing here? And the second reason, which I think is the more likely one, is because Hit Parader themselves were into the whole Nickelback hate hype that was very much a thing, even at the time. So if you're expecting to see Nickelback later in this video, don't worry. All right, back to the video.
So 65, Joan Jett.
Wow thing.
Not a metal musician.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. There was a time in the mid-80s when Joan Jett could seemingly do no wrong. After her late 70s stint with the notorious all-girl metal band, I'm not sure I'd go that far, The Runaways, Jett showcased her feisty attitude and bad reputation, get it? On a string of best-selling solo discs that spawned hits like I Love Rock and Roll and Bad Reputation, each of which helped turn her into one of the few crossover rock artists of that era. Everyone, everywhere, loved to get up and boogie to one of her hard-hitting tunes. In recent years, she's seemingly been laying low, apparently just waiting for the right moment to spring one of her guitar-powered anthems upon all of us. 64, David Bowie.
Why is David Bowie, again, they have not done their homework. Don't get me wrong, David Bowie has been a absolute cultural powerhouse. But him as metal is a huge stretch.
Like,
huge fucking stretch.
Yeah, like he undoubtedly influenced the glam image for sure, but no song I've heard from him has ever struck me as being like a metal song or anything like that.
No.
What do they say about him?
These people are on crack.
Along with the likes of Rod Stewart and Mick Jagger, David Bowie is another aged entrant in our top 100 list, almost guaranteed to raise eyebrows from coast to coast. No shit! The reason for his inclusion on what is ostensibly a hard rock compilation, well, the fact is that during his late 70s incarnation when he led the legendary Spiders from Mars, the Ziggy Stardust era Bowie followed the lead laid down by guitarist Mick Ronson to produce some of that era's most memorable hard rock hits. While he has slipped into countless other musical guises throughout his 30-plus year career, we will always prefer the out-of-this-world Ziggy-style hard rocker best.
And rest in peace, David Bowie.
Yes, rest in peace as well. 63, Sonny Sandoval of P.o.d.
Great. I remember me and my older brother would always listen to P.o.d. It was the Satellite album. That was such a banger album.
Yeah, with Alive and Boom.
And Youth of the Nation. That song is so sick.
But yeah, I'm not sure if Sonny Sandoval is really like a top 100 of all time.
But he's great. He's great.
Yeah, P.o.d.'s cool and all. Yeah. Sonny Sandoval, best known by just his first name, certainly has his legion of supporters, those fans who have rallied time after time to the strident rap metal sounds produced by P.o.d. There are some within the rock world, however, who find Sonny's strongly religious preachings to be a tad offsetting, though few could argue that his impassioned rap rock approach stands as one of the most effective vocal styles of the last decade. In addition, he's one of the few contemporary performers whose vocal style seems to strengthen when given free rein upon the concert stage.
Again, great band.
Yeah.
P.o.d. is a really good band. I know that Alex Lopez, who used to be the drummer for Suicide Silence, is now with P.o.d.
What do we have next? Ray Davies of the Kinks.
Kinky.
But another one of these bands that it's like, who calls them metal?
It's like they say that the Wiggles are metal.
Like, obviously, they're a prominent influence and whatnot, especially in, like, the 60s and whatnot. They were heavy for the time, I guess, but, like, yet another oldie but goodie. Indeed, there are a legion of longtime followers of the rock scene who insist that the Kinks' Ray Davies remains the most gifted writers and singers in the form's storied history. As the seminal force behind such early power rockers as All Day and All of the Night and You Really Got Me, later immortalized by Van Halen on their debut disc, the superior version, Davies provided vocal form and substance to some of the first guitar-driven anthems in hard rock history.
No opinion on Ray Davies.
I am kind of baffled that they would be included on a list like this. So, 61, Scooter Ward of Cold.
Oh yeah, Stupid Girl.
Yes.
I remembered that band came out and everyone talked about how spooky the drummer looked. Cold is an okay band, but it was like, it was that time of like all the post-grunge new metal bands. Like a band name was like Cold.
Yeah.
Flaw.
And this is another one of those bands where it feels obvious that they're pandering to that crowd and whatnot, because Cold is not a band that I feel like anyone would really remember much today unless you were around at the time or are a big fan of alternative metal.
Yep.
If that era of the sad sack, down at the mouth, angst-filled frontman began with Nirvana's Kurt Cobain, it may have reached its climax with Scooter Ward. No, it didn't. This is why I was really curious what they had to say about these, because they'd be saying stuff like this.
Jesus Christ.
Unfortunately, we don't mean that in terms of commercial popularity, though Ward and his band Cold have had their occasional moments in the spotlight. Rather, we mean it in the context of the incredible series of personal and professional tragedies that have befallen this shaven-headed singer over the last 5 years. The one and perhaps only good thing to have emerged from this personal angst is that it served to further inspire his creative vision and fuel the music he's made. Maybe some people felt like this at the time, but...
Again, it's like, I only know them for that one song, Stupid Girl. That was like the dumbest song name, but back then I was like, the song sounded really cool.
Yeah. Number 60, Rod Stewart. Just the reaction I was hoping I would get.
What are they smoking?
Why? What makes you think that Rod Stewart should be on a list like this?
I swear, it sounds like that the people were like just in middle school discovering this type of shit at the time.
Was there no one else you could think of? Like, how many other freaking metal bands were around at this time that more than qualified for this? But instead you go with Rod Stewart. Rod Stewart? That old guy with the big schnoz and the ragged voice? Are we kidding? Actually, no, we're not. The fact is that long before before he became the king of the modern-day crooners, Rod the Mod was establishing the quintessential hard rock frontman persona with such seminal 60s bands as the Jeff Beck Group and the Faces, with Beck following a Zeppelin-like route and the Faces establishing themselves as a Stones clone good time band. Stewart had plenty of opportunity to prove he could stand up to the sound of blaring guitars, and stand up he did with that uniquely gruff voice laying down some truly classic power-packed tunes. God.
I mean, I have nothing against Rod Stewart.
He's got some good stuff, for sure.
He's got some good stuff, but it's like, how are you saying that Rod Stewart is like remotely even rock?
Yeah, like very early rock. Like his solo stuff is a lot more poppy.
Yeah. I see him more as a pop artist.
Yeah. 59, Phil Lynott of Thin Lizzy.
I know that
Boys Are Back in Town.
Boys Are Back in Town, but also some of the members of Thin Lizzy did that one group called Black Star Riders.
Yeah, that's the band that they basically rebranded as in the early 2010s.
Yeah.
Some people consider Thin Lizzy to be 70s metal just because they are the band that basically invented the twin lead guitar. Mm-hmm. And they're one of my favorite bands from the 70s, but I'm not one of these people that likes categorizing them as metal.
They were always like Southern rock or something.
Not really Southern. They're from Ireland.
Ireland? Oh, God. It's a bruh moment right here.
Yeah. Anyway, Thin Lizzy's Philip Lynott was totally unique. As a black Irish rocker who emerged at a time in the mid-70s when few Irish and even fewer blacks were playing that kind of music, this vocalist/bassist/songwriter always stood out from the crowd like a sore thumb. But what truly made him special was his poet's heart and his soulful singing voice, brought to the forefront most prominently in the immortal The Boys Are Back in Town. To a generation of rockers who grew up under his pervasive influence, including bands such as Metallica, who turned Lynott's Whiskey in the Jar into a hit, Lynott will always reign supreme. His tragic death in 1986, so rest in peace, ended a magical music era.
How I usually look at Thin Lizzy, because when car commercials play that song, I usually associate Thin Lizzy as more of like the blue collar type of setting. That's how I've always looked at Thin Lizzy as. And so I'm just like going, oh my God, it is my own bro moment.
58, Tom Araya.
You all know my thoughts and opinions on Slayer.
Yeah.
Tom Araya is phenomenal vocalist.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, most people nowadays, they just hate Slayer because they just think they're just boring and shit. I do like Slayer.
Yeah, I like them fine. I don't really like their fans, and they're my least favorite of the big four.
Fair enough.
Yeah. There are a few more enduring, endearing, and downright overwhelming images in the heavy metal kingdom than the sight of Slayer's bassist/vocalist Tom Araya in full mid-concert roar. With his long hair flying, his angrily contorted face covered in a mask of sweat, Araya is the living embodiment of everything a real heavy metal frontman should be. There's no posing, no posturing, and only a minimal amount of direct communication with the audience, but despite it all, Araya always manages to hold the assembled throng in the palm of his hand, revving them up to do his bidding, whatever his sinister intent may be.
I mean, well, I've always seen him as a pretty good frontman, and that beginning screech from Angel of Death, it's phenomenal. And also Jeff Hanneman's
rest in peace.
Rest in peace, Jeff Hanneman, his amazing shredding off of that song. It's classic. My favorite Slayer album happens to be Christ Illusion 2006. It's a great album.
57, Scott Weiland.
Rest in peace, his soul.
Yes, God rest his soul. From Stone Temple Pilots and Velvet Revolver. Another band that I do not think belongs on this list.
Yeah, Velvet Revolver is one of Slash's projects.
Yeah, and Stone Temple Pilots, I feel like they're kind of like the bridging gap between grunge and post-grunge. Over the last 15 years, Scott Weiland has lived one of the most charmed professional lives one can imagine. Despite a series of well-documented offstage problems, this reed-thin frontman shot to the pinnacle of fame in the mid-90s as the vocalist for the Stone Temple Pilots, one of the most critically lauded and commercially successful bands of their time. But just as that band began to hit a rocky path in the early part of the 21st century, Weiland split the STP fold to join up with former Guns N' Roses rockers Slash and Duff in Velvet Revolver, a group that instantly attained platinum success around the globe.
I'm familiar with Velvet Revolver. I was never that invested, but I felt bad for Scott Weiland.
Yeah, Velvet Revolver put out 2 very good albums. 56, Andrew Wood of Mother Love Bone. Are you familiar with them?
Nope.
They are an early alternative metal / grunge band. They are very underrated. He is another, may God rest his soul person. He died very early in the 90s. This band also had members that would go on to form Pearl Jam. His contemporary Kurt Cobain has become a patron saint of the rock and roll world. Others who worked in Seattle at roughly the same time, including the likes of Eddie Vedder and Chris Cornell, have solidified their place in the contemporary music stratosphere. For whatever reason, these days, Andrew Wood is barely remembered at all. As a vital cog in the seminal days of the late 80s Seattle scene, vocalist Wood, along with his band Mother Love Bone, played as major a role as anyone in drawing initial attention to the Emerald City's burgeoning rock scene. But his premature death in 1990 brought a too quick end to a story that should have been historic. Yeah, they're a band that could have really gone places were it not for his death. And another thing that was done, the supergroup Temple of the Dog formed as a tribute to him, and the song Say Hello to Heaven was written in tribute to him. And the performance Chris Cornell gives on that song, it's oh.
Chris Cornell, another great.
Yeah. 55, Gary Cherone of Extreme, one of my favorite bands.
What subgenre is Extreme?
They're a glam metal band.
Okay, I was like, this is sort of like speed metal-ish.
Well, their guitarist, Nuno Bettencourt, very speedy player.
Oh, okay.
One of my favorite guitarists as well. It's unfortunate that most rock fans remember Gary Cherone's shockingly short, artistically unsatisfying, overly preening car wreck career with a post-Sammy Hagar Van Halen in the mid-90s more than they recall his shining more than words effort with Extreme in the 80s. No, they don't.
Good God.
Hardly anyone talks about the Cherone Van Halen album. Everyone knows him for his work with Extreme. It was with that band that Cherone's strong vocal style and self-assured stage presence first won over a legion of ardent supporters who viewed him as a true star on the rise. But after his brief, ill-fated tenure with the VH Boys, with whom he recorded just one album, Cherone's star quickly lost luster and has yet to recover its stellar sheen. These days, a lot more people are getting turned on to Extreme because they recognize just how incredible of a player Nuno is. Mm-hmm. And how great of a voice Cherone had. So that's great. It makes me happy. 54, David Coverdale of Whitesnake.
Thinking of that one. Oh, geez. I did a huge collab reaction back in 2015 where I made Stout and other people react to an audio of Dan Green, who voiced Yugi in this hentai. And he goes,
Ayumi, what's Whitesnake's 9 pound?
I don't know. Oh.
Slide it in.
Yep.
Jesus Christ.
That's one of their best albums, for sure. It seems as if people have always enjoyed picking on David Coverdale. Maybe his open-shirted, hair-flowing style was a little too lead clone for some dedicated followers of hard rock fashion. Maybe his blues-based Buffalo Bellow vocal style was just too intense for some of the more sedate members of the rock community. And maybe the string of car-humping, groupie-grabbing videos he made for MTV during his chart-topping run with Whitesnake during the go-go 80s just rubbed some folks the wrong way.
She was gonna shake her ass on the hood of Whitesnake's car.
But no matter what you may think of him, however, during his memorable stints with Deep Purple and The Snake, Coverdale has continually proven himself to be hard rock frontman par excellence. That I agree with, for sure. 53, Anthony Kiedis of Red Hot Chili Peppers.
He should be fucking up there. He should be way up there on the list.
Not on a metal list, though.
But, I mean, still.
On a list of great frontmen, for sure, but metals...
Yeah, no, they're more of alternative rock.
Yeah.
Say what you will, Red Hot Chili Peppers is a phenomenal band.
I love them. They're another one of my all-time favorites. For a dude who's been doing his own distinctly individualistic brand of mystical musical magic for over 2 decades, Anthony Kiedis still looks, acts, and sounds red hot. For a chili pepper, that is.
That was so corny.
I know. Few rockers in the history of contemporary music have lived more interesting and active life than this legendary frontman. From dating some of the top models in the known universe, to overcoming a variety of offstage problems, that's understating it. Kiedis' life reads like a soap opera fantasy come to life. But through it all, he has been at the core of making some of the most revolutionary and exciting hard rock music around. A sound that's mixed everything from hip-hop to heavy metal into a crowd-pleasing mix. I mean, those early Chili Peppers albums, those are definitely heavier, that laid the template for alternative metal. Mm-hmm. I've just never really thought of the Chili Peppers as being within that sort of vicinity.
And we all know that Will Ferrell is in the band as well.
Yes, he lives a secret double life as their drummer.
Fuck you, Dale!
But of course we can't forget when him and Chad Smith did a drum battle. 52, Rob Zombie
Rob Zombie's a bit of a mixed bag, but I do love Rob Zombie.
Yeah, definitely an iconic person for sure.
House of a Thousand Corpses, Devil's Rejects was good. Everyone loves to hate on his version of Halloween. I mean, his latest stuff was kind of meh, but almost everyone loves to go back to House of a Thousand Corpses and Devil's Rejects.
But we're not talking about his movies.
Yeah, I love his movies,
Yeah.
but I do love his stuff with White Zombie and his solo band.
Yeah, his early solo stuff. To label Rob Zombie as a mere vocalist would be doing this multidimensional performer a major disservice. Heck, even limiting him to being called a rock star only begins to scratch the surface of his varied endeavors. As a successful Hollywood director, House of a Corpses, Devil's Rejects, a gifted comic illustrator, and a noted music producer, making his Funhouse meets horror movie rock and roll anthems is just one credit on Mr. Z's ever more impressive resume. Though he's the first to admit that his strangely chanted singing style will never win any prizes for individual achievement, it's just another highly distinctive quality for this one-of-a-kind rock and roll renaissance man.
I mean, he's had a very, very good career, and it's also, I find a little bit annoying that almost every movie he makes, he puts his wife in all of his goddamn movies.
But yeah, the albums he did with White Zombie and the first 3 albums, I would say, of his solo stuff, good industrial stuff.
Most of all, fuck you!
51, Chino Marino of Deftones.
And with that, every goth girl with daddy issues is screaming.
Yes.
I love Deftones. They're a good band, but oh
sure.
my goodness. I know plenty of women that do not shut up about Deftones,
Yeah.
mostly because of Chino.
Yeah, my favorite thing about Chino is the sort of dramatic delivery he
Yes.
gives. He's like Jonathan Davis in the sense that he goes from soft-spoken to pretty belty.
Yes.
Chino Marino doesn't look like the classic rock star. He doesn't even sound like the classic rock star. But when he gets down to work with his band, the Deftones, this dark-haired, slightly chunky rocker emanates stardom from every pore of his body. His roared vocals virtually drip with emotion, providing just the right touch of manic sensibility to the tones.
It's a little bit smeared.
Yeah, this definitely has been worn.
Yeah, it's been worn down.
Yeah, I'm trying to read it. To the tone's dark tales of longing and loss. Indeed, it may be argued that Marino's From That Gut style has served as a major influence on today's generation of frontmen, many of whom seem to believe that vocal sincerity is just as important as a great singing voice. That is true. So
It is true. I'm not going to deny Deftones still going strong.
yeah, it can be argued that they're more relevant now than ever before.
Absolutely. Again, as I stated earlier, a bunch of goth girls with daddy issues is their main demographic. I'm just
Yeah.
joking. This is a joke.
Yeah, and like even though their career was still in kind of its beginning stages at the time of this, what's being said here definitely holds up, so there's not much for me to complain about.
I would say, besides my own Summer, Back to School, and Change the House of Flies, Be Quiet and Drive is a fucking kick-ass song.
Yes.